To say that guy looked surprised to be addressed in this manner would have been a massive understatement. He didn't just look surprised. He actually looked over his shoulder to see if it was really him I was talking to. But of course, the only thing behind him was the window, so then he turned back to look at me, and must have seen that my gaze was fastened directly on his face, since he breathed, "Nombre de Dios," in a manner that would have had Gina, who had a thing for Latin guys, swooning. "It's no use calling on your higher power," I informed him, as I swung the pink tasseled chair to my new dressing table around and straddled it. "In case you haven't noticed, he isn't paying a whole lot of attention to you. Otherwise, he wouldn't have left you here to fester for—" I took in his outfit, which looked a lot like something that I'd worn on the Wild Wild West. "What is it, 150 years? Has it really been that long since you croaked?" He stared at me with eyes that were as black and liquid as ink. "What is croaked?" he asked in a voice that sounded rusty from disuse. I rolled my eyes. "Kicked the bucket," I translated. "Checked out, popped off, bit the dust." When I saw from his perplexed expression that he still didn't understand, I said, with some exasperation, "Died." "Oh," he said, "died." But instead of answering my question, he shook his head. "I don't understand," he said in tones of wonder. "I don't understand how it is that you can see me. All these years no one has ever—" "Yeah," I said, cutting him off. "I hear this kind of thing a lot, you understand. Well, listen. The times, you know, they are a-changin', so what's your glitch?" He blinked at me with those big dark eyes. His eyelashes were longer than mine. It isn't often I run into a ghost who happens to be a hottie, but this guy, boy, he must have been something back when he'd been alive, because here he was dead and I was already trying to catch a peek at what was going on beneath that white shirt of his, since it was very much open at the throat, exposing quite a bit of his chest, and some of his stomach too. Do ghosts have six-packs? This was not something I'd ever had occasion, or desire, to explore before. Not that I was about to let myself get distracted by that kind of thing now. I'm a professional, after all. "Glitch," he echoed. Even his voice was liquid. His English as flat and unaccented as I fancied my own was. He clearly had some Spaniard in him, as his Dios and the coloring indicated, but he was American as I was, or as American as someone who was born before California became a state could be. "Yeah." I cleared my throat. He had turned a little and put a boot onto the pale blue cushion that covered the window seat, and I had seen definite proof that yes, ghosts could indeed have six-packs. His abdominal muscles were deeply ridged. I swallowed. Hard. "Glitch," I said. "Problem. Why are you still here?" He looked at me, his expression blank, but interested. I elaborated. "Why haven't you gone to the other side?" He shook his head. Have I mentioned his hair was dark and healthy looking, like if you touched it'd be really, really thick? "I don't know what you mean." I was getting sort of warm, but I'd already taken off my leather jacket, so I didn't know what to do about it. I couldn't very well take off anything else with him sitting there watching me. This realization might have contributed to my suddenly very foul mood. "What do you mean you don't know what I mean?" I snapped. "You're dead. You don't belong here. You're supposed to be off doing whatever it is that happens to people after they're dead. Rejoicing in heaven, or burning in hell, or being reincarnated, or ascending another plane of consciousness, or whatever. You're not supposed to be just hanging around." He looked at me thoughtfully, balancing his elbow on his uplifted knee, his arm sort of dangling. "And what if I happen to like just hanging around?" he wanted to know. I wasn't sure, but I had a feeling he was making fun of me. And I don't like being made fun of. I really don't. I wasn't ready to hit this guy. Not yet. But I was close. I mean, I just traveled a gazillion miles for what seemed like days in order to live with a bunch of stupid boys. I still had to unpack. I had already practically made my mother cry. And then I find a ghost in my bedroom. Can you blame me for being all short with him? "Look," I said, standing up fast and swinging my leg around the back of the chair. "You can do all the hanging around you want, amigo. Slack away. I don't really care, but you can't do it here." "Jessie," he said, not moving. "You called me amigo. I thought you might like to know I have a name. It's Jessie." I nodded. "Right. That figures. Well, fine. Jessie, then. You can't stay here, Jessie. And you?" Jessie was smiling at me now. He had a nice face. A good face. The kind of face that, back in my old high school, would have gotten him elected prom king in no time flat. The kind of face Gina would have cut out of magazines and taped to her bedroom wall. Not that he was pretty. Dangerous was how he looked. Mighty dangerous. And me what? I knew I was being rude. I didn't care. "What is your name?" I glared at him. "Look. Just tell me what you want and get out. I'm hot and I want to change clothes. I don't have time for—" He interrupted, as amiably as if he hadn't heard me talking at all. "That woman, your mother, called you Susie." His black eyes were bright on me. "Short for Susan?" Susanna, I said, correcting him automatically, as in, don't you cry for me. He smiled. I know the song. Yeah, it was probably in the top 40 the year you were born, huh? He just kept on smiling. So this is your room now, is it, Susanna? Yeah, I said. Yeah, this is my room now. So you're going to have to clear out. I'm going to have to clear out. He raised one black eyebrow. This has been my home for a century and a half. Why do I have to leave it? Because I was getting really mad. Mostly because I was so hot and I wanted to open a window, but the windows were behind him and I really didn't want to get that close to him. This is my room. I'm not sharing it with some dead cowboy. That got to him. He slammed his foot back down on the floor, hard, and stood up. I instantly wished I hadn't said anything. He was tall, way taller than me. I am not a cowboy, he informed me angrily. He added something in Spanish in an undertone, but since I've always taken French, I had no idea what he was saying. At the same time, the antique mirror hanging over my new dressing table started to wobble dangerously. This was not due, I knew, to a California earthquake, but to the agitation of the ghost in front of me, whose psychic abilities were obviously of kinetic bent. That's the thing about ghosts. They're so touchy. The slightest thing can set them off. Whoa, I said, holding both my hands up, palms outward. Down, down, boy. My family, Jessie raged, wagging a finger in my face, worked like slaves to make something of themselves in this country, but never as a vaquero. Hey, I said. That's when I made my big mistake. I reached out, not liking the finger he was jabbing at me, and grabbed it hard, yanking on his hand and pulling him toward me, so I could be sure he heard me as I hissed. Stop with the mirror already. And stop shoving your finger in my face. Do it again and I'll break it. I flung his hand away and saw with satisfaction that the mirror had stopped shaking. But then I happened to glance at his face. Ghosts don't have blood. How can they? They aren't alive. But I swear at that moment all the color drained from Jessie's face, as if every ounce of blood that had once been there had evaporated just at that moment. Not being alive and not possessing blood, it follows that ghosts aren't made of matter either. So it didn't make sense that I'd been able to grab his finger. My hand should have passed right through him, right? Wrong. That's how it works for most people, but not for people like me, not for mediators. We can see ghosts, we can talk to ghosts, and, if necessary, we can kick a ghost's butt. But this isn't something that I like to go around advertising. I try to avoid touching them, touching anybody really, as much as possible. If all attempts at mediation have failed, and I have to use a little physical coercion on a spirit, I generally prefer for him or her not to know beforehand that I am capable of doing so. Sneak attacks are always advisable when dealing with members of the underworld, who are notoriously dirty fighters. Jessie, looking down at his finger as if I'd burned a hole through it, seemed perfectly incapable of saying anything. It was probably the first time he'd been touched by anyone in a century and a half. That kind of thing can blow a guy's mind, especially a dead guy. I took advantage of his astonishment and said, "Now look, Jessie, this is my room, understand? You can't stay here. You've either got to let me help you get to where you're supposed to go, or you're going to have to find some other house to haunt. I'm sorry, but that's the way it is." Jessie looked up from his finger, his expression still one of utter disbelief. "Who are you?" he asked softly. "What kind of girl are you?" He hesitated so long before he said the word girl that it was clear he wasn't at all certain it was appropriate in my case. This kind of bugged me. I mean, I may not have been the most popular girl in school, but no one had ever denied me that I was an actual girl. Truck drivers honked at me at crosswalks now and then, and not because they wanted me to get out of the way. Construction workers sometimes holler weird things at me, especially when I wear my leather miniskirt. I'm not unattractive or mannish in any way. Sure, I just threatened to break off his finger, but that didn't mean I wasn't a girl, for God's sake. "I'll tell you what kind of girl I am not," I said crankily. "I am not the kind of girl who's looking to share her room with a member of the opposite sex, understand me? So either you move out or I force you out. It's entirely up to you. I'll give you some time to think about it. But when I get back here, Jessie, I want you gone." I turned around and left. I had to. I don't usually lose arguments with ghosts, but I had a feeling I was losing that one, and badly. I shouldn't have been so short with him, and I shouldn't have been rude. I don't know what came over me, I really don't. I guess I just wasn't expecting to find the ghost of such a cute guy in my bedroom is all. God, I thought, as I stormed down the hall, what am I going to do if he doesn't leave? I won't be able to change clothes in my own room. Give him a little time, a voice inside my head went. It was a voice I'd very carefully avoided telling my mom's therapist about. Give him a little time. He'll come around. They always do. Well, most of the time anyway.